Sorry about that, babe.
What's up guys, it's Cody aka the Bear Hero Bits in Glory, and we are back with another tier list video of the From Software variety. Previously the only one that I've done so far is Dark Souls 3, which I will link in the pinned comment description below if you want to check that out. But I recently finished up my Rune Level 1, 0 Scadutree Blessings, all bosses run of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC for Elden Ring. And after I did my casual run, I did that, so kind of compiled data in my brain and come up with a tier list. Couple differences about this one from my Dark Souls 3 one. This one's going to be more off the cuff. I'm pretty much going to be doing this on the spot. I don't have like a pre-made script of where I'm putting everybody. I don't have a shit ton of notes about, oh, this lore and this, that, and the other. I'm going to kind of go off of my memory and my feel and just do it, again, kind of on the spot. Also, very minor, but I changed some things in my basement setup, so some of my lighting is not as good right now, and I do apologize for that. But anyways, without any further ado, there's, I think, 30-something on this tier list. Like, for example, the Jagged Peak Drakes. It's only on here once instead of twice, and I think I noticed there's like one Ghostflame Dragon missing, so I want to say there's 42 bosses? Let me check that real quick. It's actually bothering me. There were 42 actual bosses. There's the gank squad, but that's technically not like a boss. It's required, but it's not a boss fight. It's hard to explain. Anyway. So enough rambling, okay? Let's get started here. And first, we're going to be starting with Ancient Dragon Man, who you actually encounter, I believe, is an invader. Yeah, near the Dragon's Pit entrance. And then you fight him in the actual Dragon's Pit. Yeah, that's right. You know, it's one of those standard sort of PvP style fights. He's got an interesting, I guess, look to him. Obviously, he's got the Dragon Hunter Great Katana, which you end up getting after you kill him. You know, it's one of those fights. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and thrust it high up on a pedestal or anything, so I'm just gonna put it in the C tier for now. I don't think it's like a terrible fight or anything like that, but it's not really memorable to me. Up next is Ancient Dragon Sennesax, who's, you know, similar to other dragons that we got in the base game, but the main thing that I think a lot of people hate this fight, and I'm gonna spoil it right now, I'm not like a huge fan of it either, is because there's a lot of water in the arena and he does a lot of like lightning attacks. So it can be incredibly annoying. I did beat him again at Rune Level 1, 0 Scadutree Blessing. No hit. It was super cheesy. Just kept riding back and forth on Torrent, and I think I used the Ant Spur Rapier mostly to try to get, like, rot. But then towards the end, I kind of clammed up and didn't want to get hit, because if you don't have the bubble from the Physic, you get one shot pretty much by everything. So, yeah. I don't know. It's the fight technically right before Bayle. I'm also gonna skip over the Remembrance and big time boss. Bayle's not a Remembrance boss, but he's a big time boss. We'll go through the little ones first. But for Ancient Dragon Sennesax, I don't hate it as much as maybe some people, but put it in the C tier. And I guess I enjoyed fighting Ancient Dragon Man more, so we're gonna skip over Bayle for now, and we're gonna go to the Black Knights. We have Edredd and Garrew. And I'm trying to remember, one of them had like a tongue attack. And I think it's the one that was in Fog Rift. So I gotta figure that out. But in general, they're kind of just the Black Knight that got introduced with Shadow of the Erdtree. Obviously the one has the huge mace. And the other one I think has a twin blade. Let me see here. Yeah, the Fog Rift one. And then Black Knight Edredd is the one, I think, with the twin blade that you typically are going to fight inside of a building. Yes, that appears to be correct. So I think Black Knight Garrew is the one that has the weird frog thing. And, you know, honestly, they're not terrible fights for like little mini bosses, but they're not the best thing in the world either. We're starting off with a lot of like C tiers. But for now, I'm gonna put Garrew here, Edredd here. Did I enjoy fighting them more than Sennesax? I guess I did, honestly. I'm not a huge dragon fan in this game. But anyway, so there's C tier for me. We're gonna get really filled up quick here in the C tier, I'm sure. Okay, actually I take that back. Blackgaol Knight, who for most people is gonna be the first boss that you encounter in Shadow of the Erdtree. I think if you, starting area, you just go off to the left a little bit, and you'll find Blackgaol Knight in one of the mausoleums. I think there's 4 mausoleum fights, right? 1, 2, Red Bear, Rakshasa, yep. So this is going to be not only the first mausoleum fight that most people are going to find, but the first boss fight that you're probably going to find. And I actually like it. I think it's pretty interesting. He's like your typical knight. The one thing that kind of sets him apart, I guess, he does have like a slash move where he shoots something at you, but then he also has the repeating crossbow, kind of similar to like Slave Knight Gale, Guts and Berserk sort of thing. And I actually kind of like it. I think it's a pretty good like welcome to the DLC fight, especially. You know, when I played it, obviously the first time I played it, I beat it with 0 Scadutree Blessings as well. I just started the DLC casually. And then I beat it on my actual challenge run. It's an interesting fight to learn. The only thing I don't like, and this is something that plagues all of them, it is sort of a PvP style, and even though they're like ghosts, essentially, in mausoleums, they have the ability to heal themselves with a flask, which at the, you know, Rune Level 1 0 Scadutree Blessing gets really freaking annoying really quick. You basically have to go into the fight thinking, oh, they got X amount of more health than they really have. But I actually thought it was a really good, like, welcome to the DLC fight, like I said. I enjoyed the mechanics of it, and overall it was pretty fun to learn. And next we have Chief Bloodfiend, who was the boss in, what was the cave? The Rivermouth Cave, which was down below in, like, the weird area. Not the Abyssal Woods, but the weird, like, rivery area. And throughout that cave, you deal with a lot of, like, lesser versions of this enemy. And this enemy actually drops the, whatchamacall, that super broken weapon that got nerfed a bit, right? Doesn't he drop it? I'm just making sure right now. Maybe he doesn't drop it? A little tough doing things off the cuff here, guys. What is the Bloodfiend's Arm, I think was the name of it, right? How do you get it? Yes, it is a... Oh, no, you don't get it from him. You get it from... That's right, you get it from a group in the Prospect Town. That's correct. But anyways, Chief Bloodfiend basically has that. I don't mind the fight. It's basically what you'd expect from the rest of these types of enemies, except obviously a little bit more varied moveset, because it's not a standard grunt. One thing I was surprised to learn, and I did this during my challenge run, you could actually parry him, which made a pretty big difference for me. Pretty much was the reason I was able to beat him on Rune Level 1 0 Scadutree Blessing without too much issue. This is another fight that I actually don't mind. But I don't know if it's worthy enough to be, like, in the B tier. So actually right now I'm going to put him at the top of the C tier. We'll see. We'll see how that goes from there, but... Commander Gaius will skip for now, and we'll move on to Count Ymir, who is the boss that you fight after Metter, Mother of Fingers. Count Ymir becomes the Mother of Fingers, I believe, and it's sort of a gank fight. You fight... I guess I should probably look this shit up because I can't remember everybody's name. I like the lore, but I'll be honest with you guys, as the years have gone on, I watch less and less Vati, I just don't have the time. So some of the stuff sort of, over my head. Who is it that you fight? Jolon? I think it's Sword Hand of Night Jolon, the one Sauron-looking enemy that's, or NPC, that's in the cathedral with Count Ymir. So you have to fight her first, and then you fight Ymir, who pretty much does this, like, kind of transformation into the Mother of Fingers. Starts being able to spawn the finger crawler enemies. At the end of the day, it's still another, like, NPC style fight, but I don't know. Count Ymir's character is pretty interesting. I'm not a big fan of those fights where you I have to beat, you know, the Sword Knight companion person first every single time. And I think that does bump it down a little bit, especially when you're doing a challenge run. It can be pretty friggin' annoying. Casually, you know, simple, but Yeah, Count Ymir is going to be another C tier for me. I'm going to go ahead and put him... Yeah, I'm going to put it below Ancient Dragon Man just because of the whole thing, like I said, where you have to beat the other NPC every time you fail. That's annoying. Casually, is it going to be that big of a deal? Probably not, but here we are. Alright, and up next we got Curseblade Labirith. I didn't mean to scroll up. Anyway, you fight these types of enemies, the Curseblade enemies out in the overworld. This is going to be probably the first non-boss tough enemy that most people will encounter in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. And despite playing, you know, in a challenge run and despite playing casually, I still don't really know the movesets that well for these enemies. And the big gimmick to this fight is the Curseblade Labirith has the ability to kind of like disappear. For my challenge run, I came up with a strategy where I pretty much hid in the corner and it would come down and attack me and eventually become visible. I'd have like a 100% physical shield and I try to like counter off that. It's one of those like weird gimmicky fights and it's an enemy that I typically find pretty annoying. So I'm gonna, you know what? This is actually gonna be my first D tier. Don't like this fight. I don't know. Maybe you guys do? I didn't. Up next, we have another not a black jail, but a mausoleum fight. And this might be the last one that most people find. I'd say either the third or fourth one. That's Dancer of Ranah. This boss has an interesting moveset. Again, you have the same kind of gimmick where, you know, she has the ability to heal herself, which could be a bit frustrating. I actually think that she took me the longest out of the 4 mausoleum fights on my challenge run. It can get a little tricky, basically. But yeah, overall, I kind of liked like the flow and the move style that the Dancer of Ranah has, but it's nothing groundbreaking. Again, another NPC style humanoid fight. I definitely don't think it's as good as Blackgaol Knight. Has more to offer than the Black Knights. Is it better than Ymir? I'm gonna put her right before Ymir. I think it's just another C tier type of fight. I found a lot of the fights that aren't like Remembrance and Big Daddy fights are sort of to me, at least. That might be a topic for another video or something, I have no idea, but... Oh, here we go, we got some cool bosses. You have the Death Knight version 1 and version 2. You have the one in the Fog Rift Catacombs. And then you have the other one in the Scorpion River Catacombs. More or less, they're basically the same boss. The one has twin axes and the other one has a long aft axe. They basically have like lightning attacks. They're very, very similar. They can be parried, they can be backstabbed, which helped make my challenge run a lot easier. And even though they're both very similar, they do have a little bit of difference between them. I don't really have a preference as to which one I think is easier, better, whatever the case may be, so I kind of lumped them together here, which is what I'm going to do on the tier list. But I felt like they were a breath of fresh air, a cool design. I liked the armor, I liked their weapons, I thought the moveset and the fact that you could parry and backstab was interesting. And if I remember correctly, lore-wise, they're Death Knights, so they're, you know, involved with Godwyn, the Golden, probably protecting him or something. I don't really know exactly what the lore is. Again, I don't keep up with it these days that much, but I liked these fights. They were fun fights. And I will also put both of them on the B tier. Now the question here is, do I think that they're better than the Blackgaol Knight? Oof. And I'm gonna say yes. I think they were better than the Blackgaol Knight. And I'll stand by that. And up next we have the Deathrite Bird. Apparently somebody put buffed, I don't really know why. I'm just gonna keep this short and sweet, guys. The Deathrite Birds are not my favorite bosses. This is pretty much one of the same ones from the base game. And yeah, easy D tier for me. And I'd put Curseblade Labirith above it just for the fact that it's something new. Not much else to say. And the same goes for Demi-Human Queen Marigga. It's just another Demi-Human queen on a coast in the Cerulean Coast area. There's a lot of, you know, lower enemies around it. Nothing special. This is clearly another D tier for me. Oof. You know, honestly, I might put it below the Deathrite Bird, because at least the Deathrite Bird is hard, in my opinion anyway. I always found the Deathrite Birds to be, you know, sort of tricky in the base game. And Demi-Human Queen Marigga is basically just like a crappy low-level gank. Easy fight. I think it took me like 2 attempts on my challenge run, and obviously 1 attempt on my regular run, so not much else to say there, I guess. And up next we have Demi-Human Swordmaster Onze, who was one of the bosses at the end of those cool added things, the jails, the Bellarat jail in particular. And Onze was pretty interesting. He's a little dude who had crazy moves and flips and also parryable and stuff. But interesting fight. What's the name? Like, this is the same race as the dude Bach, right? The Seamster guy. I don't know, but anyway, I was pretty surprised to see him at the end of the jail. I wasn't expecting him, and I do think it's a pretty fun fight. I don't know. Just kind of had that interesting off-the-wall sort of feel, and as such, I think he's lumped up into the B tier for me. I don't think he's as good as the Death Knights or the Blackgaol Knights, but I prefer Demi-Human Swordmaster over Chief Bloodfiend, Dragon Man, Ymir, and all them. So I don't think it's a C tier. I actually think it's interesting enough to be a B tier. I'm gonna stick with that as well. Another instance of another double up, which is why we didn't have 42 bosses or whatever on here. Divine Beast Dancing Lion. I'm going to completely skip over the non-remembrance version in the Ancient Ruins of Rao. Similar mechanics, but kind of a shittier arena, and obviously that one has Deathblight. I don't want to pretend that they're the same, because they're not. I would say the non-remembrance one, it annoyed the crap out of me on my challenge run, by the way. It was one of the harder fights in the whole challenge run for me. Mostly, again, because of the arena and the Deathblight stuff. Because of the Deathblight stuff, I had to do some extra things. I had to put on a talisman to resist Deathblight a little bit more. I had to use my Beast Torch to keep the Basilisks away. It was really annoying. I would probably put that one in the C somewhere. But I'm going to skip it, and this will be the Remembrance one, okay? And going back to my criticisms for the Deathrite Bird, we have the Fallingstar Beast, who's another reskin of a base game boss. In general, do I like the Fallingstar Beast? I actually do. I think they're pretty interesting bosses. I'm not going to penalize this for being another repetitive boss, because, I mean, Elden Ring's kind of littered with them regardless. I'm going to kind of judge it as it is. If I was going to punish it for being a repeating boss, I'd easily put it in the D tier. But I do enjoy these fights, and as such, I'll put it in the C tier, but I'll put it at the bottom for now. And next we have the Furnace Golems. There's a bunch of these guys. They do what? Is it hard tiers? They do Physics. They drop Physics when they die. Yeah, like Crystal tier, and they drop Furnace Visages and whatnot. The one drops Deflecting hard tier, which is a pretty interesting one. And kind of turn the game into Sekiro a little bit, at least for boss fights. I think as a spectacle, they're cool. After you kill 1 or 2, you honestly get over it. They're very, very meaty and annoying. There's 2 versions. There's one that you kind of have to peck away at. And then there's one where you have to, like, do a gimmick thing where you throw hefty pots or whatever into the top to kill it quicker. But yeah, after you fight the first 1 or 2, you kind of get over it, and in subsequent playthroughs, man, unless I'm, like, specifically looking for something, I'm not going to bother. And above all else, it's really not a boss. It's a field boss without an actual boss bar or boss music, so I'm gonna put it D tier, but I'll put it above the reskins. And up next we got a sort of reskin, and I think there's 3 versions of this. Let me bring up my files here. There's There's the Ghostflame Dragon in the opening area by that one town. There's the Ghostflame Dragon in Shadow Altus. And then there's the Ghostflame Dragon in Cerulean Coast. I'm just gonna judge them for what they are, because other than their surroundings, they're basically the same boss. The first encounter, it's pretty much a 1v1. There are some enemies on the outside, but you probably won't trigger them. The Cerulean Coast one, during the fight, like undead enemies start rising, so it becomes a bit of a gank. And then the other one in Shadow Altus is legitimately a gank. It's got an interesting premise. There's like a war going on, basically like Black Knights and archers and all these people are fighting the Ghostflame Dragon. So you could hypothetically sit there, let the enemies peck the Ghostflame Dragon down a little bit, have the Ghostflame Dragon kill all the enemies and then fight it, which is what I did on my challenge run. But yeah, more or less it's a dragon from the base game, reskinned with different resistances and stuff. But there are some new moves. Some of the gimmicks and tricks up its sleeve are a little bit different from your run-of-the-mill dragon, like, fuck, what's the name of the dragon? Elden Ring dragon bosses, field boss. I can't remember the name. Yeah, there's like a... I don't know, whatever. I can't remember the fucking name. I'm scrolling. Agile. Agile is typically the first dragon that people fight in Elden Ring. And the Ghostflame Dragon does have a couple different movesets and timings compared to that, which was actually, I will say, it was fresh at the beginning, but then when you keep fighting them, and then you keep fighting them on subsequent playthroughs, it's a snooze fest, man. So, I'm torn between C and D tier, to be honest with you. You know, I think just because it's new, I'll say it's C tier, and I'll actually put the Ghostflame Dragon... all of them, sure, whatever, above Sennesax and above the Fallingstar Beast, but I'd actually rather fight the Black Knights, even though they're kind of buffed up field bosses. Whatever. Alright, Golden Hippo. There's actually, was it 2 or 3 more, I think, versions of the Hippo on the overworld that drop blessings. But this is the one that you fight at the entrance of Shadowkeep. It is an optional boss because you can enter Shadowkeep and fight Messmer from a different direction. So this is a very mixed bag fight for me. I like the idea of it. I think the arena is interesting, but it's actually kind of annoying. And one of the main problems with this boss is something that plagued a lot of bosses throughout From Software, especially Elden Ring. The camera's fucking horrible, especially when the hippo gets right on top of you. The hitboxes are also really janky, which is a problem. And the critical / riposte hitbox is all sorts of messed up. I can't even explain it. I hated this fight, to be honest with you, on my challenge run. And I wasn't a huge fan of it on my casual run either. Objectively, though, I think it's an interesting design. Obviously, the Golden Hippo has the, the needle attack and all this, crazy flashing gold stuff, right? Compared to the field bosses. And it's a bit of a challenging boss, but I think it's mostly for the wrong reasons. The inconsistency of the golden attacks, the cruddy hitboxes, and the cruddy camera. And honestly, because of that... like, what do I like more, the Ghostflame Dragon or the Hippo? I don't know, man. I think the Hippo's problems, like, really bring the positives down for me. I'll put the Hippo on the C tier, but I'm gonna put it here. I think, even with the problems, it's still a little bit more interesting than the Black Knights. A little more interesting than the reskins and the Ghost Flames. So, whatever. I've seen some people really like the Golden Hippo, and if you do, good for you, but I didn't really like it. It was for me. Jagged Peak Drake. There's really not much to say, it's just another Drake. Nothing really crazy, and then there's a duo version of this fight, where they fight each other. I guess I like the Drake more than the Demi-Human Queens. The Deathbirds are annoying, but at least the, I don't know, the design and the challenge is better. So I'll put it here. And up next we have Lamenter, who is another jail boss. Is it Bonnie Jail? Lamenter's jail, duh. It has a gimmick to it where basically it spawns all of these copies or clones, and there's like one right one and the rest aren't, and if you don't kill them in time, you get some sort of like debuff slash damage thing happen to you. It's interesting. I can't sit here and actually say that I know the mechanics inside and out. For my challenge run, I actually used a rune arc. It was the only boss I used a rune arc for in the DLC. And I used the Elden Beast sword to use waves of gold to deal with all the clones, because otherwise I wasn't doing enough damage with at level 1 with 0 blessings. I give props for being interesting. It's a weird, quirky boss that can be incredibly annoying on challenge runs, and I guess if you have doo-doo damage on a regular run, it could be probably annoying too. I definitely don't think it's worthy of a B tier by any means, but I don't think it's bad, so I'm gonna put it on the C. And just because, honestly, the gimmick's interesting enough, I'll put him above Count Ymir, I guess. That's fine. Lots of C's. Alright, we're gonna skip Messmer and Metter and Midra and Putrescent and RADAHAN. And I'm actually just gonna go right in with both bears. We have Ravla and Rugalea. They are very similar to base game bear fights. They do have, you know, they look a little bit cooler. They got like the red fur and stuff. And I think some of the attacks are different than like your typical rune bear. Nothing to write home about. I kind of learned the fights inside and out when I was doing my challenge run because I was forced to. I think they're a step up from the base game rune bears, but at the end of the day, they're still kind of like a rune bear reskin with some differences. So I'd say another C tier for me. I guess I enjoyed fighting them. Maybe slightly more than the Ghostflame Dragons, but that's good enough for me. And then we got Red Bear, who's another Mausoleum fight. Red Bear is actually my least favorite of the Mausoleum fights. He's got claws and crazy roar moves and stuff. It's, you know, basically mimicking, you know, Ravla and Rugalea, basically. I also found it to be the easiest of the 4. Probably the least interesting and the easiest of the 4, so because of that, it's also going to be another C tier, going to be below Blackgaol Knight, Dancer of Ranah, and Rakshasa. I guess I'll put Red Bear. I'm torn if I like it more than... Actually, I think I like the Black Knights more. Even though it's more unique than the Black Knights, it didn't really do much for me. I don't know. Skip over Rolana and Ramana and Scadutree Avatar. Here we go. We get in the same area where you fight the Fallingstar Beast. You also fight 2 tree Sentinels. One with a torch, and then one that has the shield. And there's really not much to say. Another reskin. Do you like the Tree Sentinel fight? If you do, there you go. I actually do kind of like these fights. And because of that, I will actually put it above, at the top of the D tier. And my reasoning for that is, I like the Tree Sentinel fights way more than the Demi-Human Queens, the Drakes, the Deathrite Birds. Furnace Golems wear out their welcome really fast, even more than reskins. And I wasn't a huge fan of Curseblade, so yeah. Seems like it's probably there. Actually, you know what? Fuck that. See? This is off the cuff. This is off the cuff. If I put the Fallingstar Beast up in C tier because I liked it, then I do the damn same thing for the Tree Sentinels. So, you know what? There we go. I'll put it in front of Sennesax and the Fallingstar Beast, but I think that's a good spot for it. And we got 2 more non-remembrance Big Daddy bosses. We got Rakshasa, who is the 4th and final Mausoleum fight. And probably the coolest drops of the bunch, because you get the Rakshasa armor and the katana that basically buff your damage. Has a negative effect to it, but from my knowledge and general research, the only negative effect is it's a heavier armor that provides worse armor abilities, but it still buffs your attacks. So it's a good trade-off, especially for casual runs. And I think I used, it's actually a pretty good segue, so we'll put Rakshasa. Rakshasa also has a pretty interesting attack where it goes back and forth, and it's sort of Dancer of Ranah-like with like crazy fluid movement. And it was fun to parry. And because of that, I actually think that I will put Rakshasa above Dancer of Ranah. And my whole leading into it thing was, in order to beat Jori the Elder Inquisitor, who prevents you from getting to Midra, I used the Rakshasa armor on my challenge run. This is an interesting fight to grade. So apparently Jori was originally going to be a Remembrance boss, which would have been pretty whack. Jori is obviously the Elder Inquisitor. The arena and fight itself is interesting. He spawns a lot of other Inquisitor helpers, both of the regular and fat variety. Goes buck wild with spells and stuff, and can be backstabbed, which ultimately is pretty much what I did on my challenge run. A lot of people hate Jori, especially people that do level 1 runs. Didn't take me that long. Still not a huge fan though. I'm very glad it wasn't a Remembrance boss, because that would have been pretty freaking lame. But objectively, you know, it's not D tier for me. I don't think Jori's B tier either. It's gonna be another C. But like, I like it more than all of this. I like it more than Red Bear. A little bit more unique than the Black Knights. We're looking probably in this territory here. And honestly, I think Jori's gonna fit in perfectly right behind the Golden Hippo. And I pretty much stand by that. But now we're getting into the big daddies, guys. We're getting into the Remembrance bosses and whatnot. Obviously, Bayle's not a Remembrance, but might as well should be. Okay, so let's start with Bayle. Bayle obviously has a dramatic build-up leading up to him. You have the NPC Egon just going ham. Wonderful voice actor. You have the ability to summon Egon in the fight. Obviously, I didn't do it. I don't really ever do any of that. And Bayle has been lauded as the best dragon fight that FromSoft has ever done. And I think probably from a mechanical standpoint and a spectacle, I could totally see that argument. Now, this has nothing to do with this tier list. I still prefer Dark Eater Midir, and I've mentioned before I'm not a huge fan of Dark Souls 3, but I like a lot of the bosses a lot. I still think Midir is a more fun fight. I had a decent amount of trouble with Bayle on my challenge run. I ended up beating it without getting hit. It's a huge spectacle fight. Phase 2, there's a crap ton of lights and explosions, and it's a fair fight. But again, there's a couple things that really bother me about it. One, the camera gets really crappy when you get close to him again. Two, he has insanely weird tracking on some of his fire breath attacks. Like, it'll literally be shooting one way and then it will randomly break off, and I still to this day can't tell if that's intended or not. I know sometimes the way the fire bounces off the back of the arena, but in general he has some attack. I don't know, it's just a little janky. And I do think it's a really good fight though. And I think, like, if we're looking at this list objectively, Bayle is clearly better than every single boss that I've ranked so far. But I don't think Bayle is an S tier fight. I know a lot of people will vehemently disagree. I think it's a very good fight, but to me it's not S tier. So I'm putting Bayle in the A tier. And this has nothing to do with my opinion on Midir. It's just a little bit too much jank and inconsistent stuff with Bayle that, you know, the same could be said for something like Midir, but again, this is not a Dark Souls 3 tier list. I think it's a really good fight, and I think it's worthy of being one of the top bosses in the game. The whole game, not just the DLC. But I don't think it's S tier. So, sticking to it. Next is an interesting one. Commander Gaius. I hated this boss. when I played it casually, and for the most part during my challenge run I hated it as well. The more and more that I fought it, because he was stomping my shit in on my challenge run, I actually enjoyed it. This is one of the more satisfying, cool combat flow fights that the game has to offer. You really kind of get in a groove, and it's not overly punishing, but you have to learn it and you have to be on top of your game. And because of that, I really actually want to put him in A tier. But why I'm not going to put him in the A tier is a couple of reasons. One, his charge attack is still kind of janky. There's been times where I'm for sure thinking I dodged it, and I didn't. And in the one patch, Gaius used to start closer to the fog wall, and then they ended up having to move him back, probably because of said jank. And I know this is gonna sound probably too harsh, but he doesn't have his own boss music. He has like the same music as like Commander Niall and Commander O'Neill. Which, like, I understand, but, like, he's a fucking remembrance boss. Like, really? You can't give him his own music? And because of the general jank of the charge attack, the lack of his own music, and the fight just doesn't feel weighty to me at all. It just feels like a field boss. A fun one, with cool mechanics, but at the end of the day, it just feels like another field boss to me. So yeah, because of that, guys, I'm gonna put Commander Gaius in the B tier, but I will put him at the top for now, because it's actually not that bad of a fight. And up next we have the Remembrance version of the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. I feel like a broken record at this point, but a lot of the issues that I have with the Divine Beast Dancing Lion are plague a bunch of other bosses. The camera could be a bit of a problem in this fight, regardless of how much you know, because trust me, I had to learn this fight inside and out, especially for the Ancient Ruins of Rao version. You know, I fought it twice on my challenge run. But, I will say, the spectacle of this fight, the soundtrack, the opening cutscene, the general mechanics and just the display of everything, how it could switch from, you know, phase 1 to electric to wind to ice, and then it spazzes out and could do all three at the end. It's insanely, like, just, it's a spectacle. People say that Bayle is like the biggest spectacle fight, which, you know, I guess it is, but Divine Beast Dancing Lion could also be right up there with the spectacle, and I actually find it to be a more fun fight. Now, it does have some BS. The camera's a little BS. The electric phase is also BS. There's very few super safe windows to attack. Obviously, on a more casual run, you can kind of like grit through it, but if you're doing a challenge run, you got to be way more careful. The wind, I guess, phase is a lot more easily punishable, and I actually find the ice phase to be a little bit tricky as well. But I actually hated this boss on my casual run, and then I gained a lot of respect for it on my challenge run. And because of that, I do think it's an A tier fight, all things considered. I'm trying to be objective here. Is it better than Bayle? I don't think so. I think it's just below Bayle. I think that some days I prefer the Divine Beast, and some days I prefer Bayle, but I do think overall Bayle is a little bit better of a package than the Divine Beast, but it's pretty close to me. Messmer the Impaler. Ow, I just hit my desk really hard. So obviously Messmer is like the one that was really touted. It's, you know, I can't see it, but I have like the statue from the limited edition version of the game. You know, all the teaser trailers were all about Messmer. And casually, I destroyed Messmer so quick that I didn't really get to appreciate anything. Wasn't until my challenge run that I really had to learn the fight. And the soundtrack, which is sort of like a weird remixed version of like... It's got a slight bit of like the theme song from Elden Ring in it, in a way. It's not quite like in your face like RADAHAN, obviously, but... the presentation, the challenge, the mechanics, really fun to learn. Cool combos. Messmer has that one attack that's like similar to Waterfowl, sort of. It's like his version of it, but it's a lot easier to dodge, which is very satisfying. And Phase 1 and Phase 2 are so different Obviously, he's very unhinged in Phase 2, but I kind of like that. That Phase 2, while it is more frantic and unhinged, you know, he's a lesser version of himself, so there's some decent punish windows. It's not like he becomes like an uber force in Phase 2. It's sort of like, honestly, Messmer is one of the best fights they've ever made. It has so much going for it, lore-wise, soundtrack, design, the 2 phases, the mechanics and the combos. And it wasn't until after my challenge run that I really appreciated Messmer. And Messmer is easy S tier. Not even close. I don't know if it's the best fight yet, but it's S tier. Easy. Metter Mother Fingers. This is another weird one to grade, because I actually really like the design. I like the arena a lot. I like the soundtrack a lot. And I like the general lore. It's very Bloodborne-y. In general, I do really like the, you know, the spacey sort of like bosses like Estelle. Metter has a couple problems though. And in general, it's actually not that bad of a fight to learn. The mechanics are interesting. Phase 2 becomes a problem. And the reason why I am not a huge fan of Phase 2 comes down to specifically one attack that's almost impossible to dodge. I didn't actually, I got lucky on my successful attempt on my challenge run. It didn't do it. But there's like a laser attack that the only way to dodge it, there's only 2 ways to my knowledge. One is you're far enough away at the start and you diagnose it immediately and start running and you could actually outrun it. But we're talking like you got to diagnose it instantly and you can't be up close. Or you use something like Raptor of the Mists. Otherwise, it's almost undodgeable, and I hate that. And there's another attack that's not undodgeable, but I found it to be very annoying, also revolving around AoE laser explosions. Phase 2 is just not very enjoyable. I felt like they could have tuned that up a little bit more and obviously get rid of the BS attack. Now, where do I put it is the question. Good fight, not a great fight, it's flawed. I actually think it's just below Gaius because Gaius is just a little bit more fun and fair combat-wise. Metter has everything else going for it. Better presentation, better soundtrack, better arena. But Gaius just has a better combat flow, so I'm gonna leave it there. And up next we have Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame. And I don't know if this is gonna be a hot take, but I think Midra's the best boss in the DLC. Now, the area leading up to Midra, kind of boring. It's atmospheric, but boring, the Abyssal Woods. Midra's Manse, fun, not long enough. In my opinion, the only thing that's going against Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame, is the first part of the fight where you have to kill the non-true boss version. Becomes incredibly tiresome, especially on challenge runs or if you're having trouble with him casually. But that's in my opinion, the only blemish. And I mean that sincerely. Midra, to me, felt the most Dark Souls-like of the bosses in Elden Ring, which is a good thing. I felt like Midra's attacks and flow of combat were varied enough, but not so overly complicated. Like some of the fights can feel a little bit much. Midra is also parryable, which is great. I love parrying in this game. The soundtrack's awesome. I love the boss design. The cutscene's rad. The boss arena's cool. The lore around Midra's cool. I really like Midra. Very fun, back and forth, flowy combat. Which also, like, if you don't parry, sort of includes almost all the mechanics that Elden Ring has to offer. There are a lot of attacks that you could literally jump over and punish. There's a spinny attack where if you duck, it misses you entirely. And obviously, you know, Midra has the strikes, has like the frenzy flame stuff, which can get a little overwhelming if you're not positioned properly or you don't know what to do, but it's a good variance. Obviously also Midra has like the short like dagger attack, which can catch you off guard when you're up close. You know, going into phase 2, Midra does like the AoE. It's just, and it's also spectacle-y, because after the AoE, like, everything's just frenzy flame everywhere. But I don't have issues that I have with this fight like I do with some of the others. Like, to me, there's never a camera issue in this fight. I don't feel like there's a bullshit attack that I literally can't dodge. You know, I beat Midra without getting hit. I think that Midra and Messmer, again, are two of the best bosses that FromSoft has ever made. And, you know, looking quickly at the bottom here, we have a couple bosses left. Kind of the shining examples of the DLC for me. Midra's... I was blown away by Midra, to be honest with you. I could be overinflating this, but I love the Midra. I know some people didn't. Some people don't even fight Midra because it's so out of the way. You have to fight Jory, and then you have to go through the Abyssal Woods and then go through the Manse. So that, you know, it's a very, very missable fight, which, if you did miss it, I recommend you go back and fight it. And I don't think I mentioned the soundtrack, but it's sort of like, much like with Messmer, how it's sort of got a remixed, you know, theme of Elden Ring in it. The Midra OST sort of has like a more hectic, heretical, remix of the whatchamacall, the merchants, you know, the frenzy merchant people. It's a cool ass fight, man. I really enjoyed it. And my next playthrough, I'm gonna try to beat Midra. My casual playthrough, I just, you know, at that point I had such a high blessing, I just kind of dominated him. My challenge run version, I parried him into oblivion, and then I think the next challenge run that I do, because I'm sure I'll do another one, I'll probably try to do no hit, no parry, which will be interesting to relearn that fight in a sense, but props to Midra. Good job, Miyazaki. Alright, next we have Putrescent Knight, who has a boss drop-in similar to that of Dark Eater Midir. It keeps appearing a lot in this list, and people have jokingly referred to it as like the weird ghost gooey version of RADAHAN. It's a enemy on horseback. It's kind of goofy. I don't know how to really describe it. It's a goofy fight. I'm trying to really formulate my thoughts here. A little tough for this guy. So obviously it's like a horseback encounter. You know, Putrescent Knight swings the sort of, I guess we should look it up here. I also forgot to mention that Putrescent Knight is in the Stone Coffin Fisher, and then after you beat it, you're able to do the St. Trina's questline stuff, which is interesting. But yeah, the designs, it's weird. It's just goofy. It's like weird. I applaud this fight for being different. I'll say that. But I wasn't a huge fan of it. The soundtrack's okay, the arena's cool, the drop-in's cool, although it can get kind of annoying on subsequent deaths and playthroughs. The mechanics are fun. The Putrescent Knight is able to separate from the horse, which does like a charge attack, which is interesting. And then later on in the fight, Putrescent Knight is able to do weird like blue flame attacks and turn into this weird mountain of goo where there's flame dropping everywhere. It gets a little hectic. Again, I applaud the interesting nature of the fight, but I don't think it's nowhere near Midra or Messmer for me. I also don't think it's anywhere near Bayle or Divine Beast Dancing Lion. I actually think Commander Gaius is more fun to fight, and I guess it would fit more along the lines of Meter and like the Death Knights and those people on the B tier right now. Like, who do I enjoy fighting more? And yeah, I don't know, Putrescent Knight didn't do it for me, guys. Okay fight, just it didn't really do it for me. And I'm gonna put, I don't think it's bad, it's definitely not bad, but I actually like the Death Knights more. And I know there's two of them, I know they're not Remembrance bosses, but it is what it is. And I'm actually gonna rearrange here a little bit. I'm gonna put Radahn here. And I'll keep that there. Okay, so Scadutree Avatar. One of the more interesting designs and bosses that FromSoft has ever come up with, that's for sure. Also weird gimmicks, like you have to kill it 3 times. It has like 3 health bars, basically. Again, a fight that I trounced through casually, but on my challenge run I had to learn it. And I actually really appreciated it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's perfect. I kind of felt like there was more camera problems with this fight, especially I was using Starfist, so a very up-close weapon. And I encountered a few deaths because I got too close and I literally had no idea what the fuck was going on. But in general, I do feel like the mechanics of the fight are interesting. The arena's interesting, it looks interesting, soundtrack's alright. Other than the camera, I'm not a huge fan of the Phase 3, where it does like this insane like blow-up thing. I was able to kind of skirt around that in my challenge run, thank goodness, and kill it quickly. But I actually had more fun with that fight than I thought I would, and it was another fight, much like Messmer, much like Divine Beast Dancing Lion, Gaius, where I appreciated it more on my challenge run, having to learn it more, right? So again, I think this is another B tier for me, and I'm gonna put it above Meter, but below Gaius. I still can't believe I'm giving Gaius so much love, because for a while I despise Gaius, but I still feel like Gaius's combat flow is more fun than Scadutree Avatar. So, yeah. Alright, interesting stuff now, the final three here. Ranah Twin Moon Knight. This is a remembrance boss that people are going to encounter pretty early. Typically it's going to be probably, I'd say, your first or second, with either Divine Beast Dancing Lion being 1 or 2. Boss arena is very similar to that of, wish I could remember the names, Loretta, where you got like the circle with the water. Lore-wise, I'm pretty sure Ranah is literally sisters with Ranah, but she was in love with Messmer. Am I making this up? I don't know if I'm gonna get the lore here on the wiki. I don't remember the lore exactly, but she went to the Land of Shadow, and I'm pretty sure Ranah sisters with Ranah, Messmer. We can use good old Google here. Well, now we have somebody saying Ranah was not infatuated or in love with Messmer. I guess that was probably just like the scuttlebutt early on, but I think she's yeah, she's one of his top generals. I guess she was his blade. That's interesting. But anyways, yeah, the lore behind it's cool. The design's fucking awesome. It's very reminiscent of what's his face from Dark Souls 3? Oh my god, why am I blanking? Pontiff Sullivan with the you know, the fire and the magic swords. And aside from, you know, the lore in the arena, the soundtrack's cool, and it's just a freaking fun fight, man. It's a lot of fun. Phase 1, obviously we don't have like the super duper buffs, we're not doing the crazy crashing moon attack, but it's a lot of fun to learn. And then Phase 2, you get the buffs, you get some more AoE After Effects sort of stuff, and you get, like I mentioned, the crazy moon slam spell thing towards the end. It's a lot of fun to learn. It's another fight very similar to Midra, where you could parry, and it's fun to parry, and I parried on my challenge run, but you can also jump over a lot of attacks and punish. It incorporates a lot of the new mechanics from Elden Ring that separates it from the older games. And at first, Ranah can seem overwhelming, and some of the combos are huge. But you learn them pretty quickly, and you're forced to learn them, especially on a challenge run. They are fair. And it is a top tier, S tier fight for sure. The question to me is, do I enjoy Ranah more than Messmer and Midra? I still think Midra is better. So the real question is, who do I enjoy more, Messmer or Ranah? And I think it, you know, reading up about how she was basically his blade, it's kind of funny that they both end up in the same spot, basically. It's neck and neck, man. It's a really fun fight, but ultimately I feel like the weight of Messmer And the fact that Messmer's Phase 2 is so different and fair puts him just a little bit above Ranah for me, but Ranah is a top tier S tier banger fight, no question. And next we have Ranah, Saint of the Bud, who is one of the required Remembrance bosses along with Messmer to finish the DLC. And I've seen a lot of interesting takes about Ranah. Or Romina, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm gonna go with Ranah, but whatever. Casually, I think Ranah is a really fun fight. On challenge run variety, which kind of hurt me. Some of the hitboxes of the attacks are a little janky, and ultimately ended up doing like a parry kill for the most part. I did get a couple of regular attacks in, but ultimately on my challenge run it was a parry kill. But the things that I really like about Ranah, I love the boss arena, I love the soundtrack, I love the design. It's very reminiscent of like Scorpionus Nazca from Dark Souls 2. But one of the things that I really enjoy is obviously it's a rot boss, Saint of the Bud. Very huge pink influence, which is very different. There aren't really many pink bosses throughout FromSoft's library, if any, that I could think of. Obviously, you know, you got some red and pink with Millennia and whatnot, but it's just it's a very visually interesting fight, and the fact that, you know, she's kind of like a weird centipede thing. It's got weird movement and kind of like ambient noise of the legs moving around all the time. It's got a lot to offer, and I do find the fight generally fun, like the mechanics. Phase 2, she starts going crazy with AoEs, which a lot of people have problems with, but I don't think I ever got hit by them on all my attempts, because as long as you're not greedy, you can pretty much diagnose it quickly and run away. Now, where the AoEs go, they're these like pink butterflies that explode. Seems to be pretty random, so you have to be like on the ball. But as long as you're not super like greedy, it really shouldn't be a big deal. Yeah, and in general, it's a fun fight, but my initial reaction of Ranah was one of my favorite fights in the game, but then it did get kind of knocked down a little bit after I did the challenge run, because I kind of noticed again some of the flaws, namely hitboxes, weird lingering hitboxes and stuff, where it's a little tough unless you literally know the game inside and out. But overall, wonderful package, very interesting design, and I really applaud the fact that they just kind of went balls to the wall with her. But again, kind of had some flaws and cracks show after the challenge run. So I don't think she's S tier. Initially, I actually thought she was S tier, not gonna lie. But I will still put her in the A tier. And now the question is where? I'm gonna put her above the Divine Beast, but below Bayle. And the reason that I'm putting her above the Divine Beast, they're very much equal in terms of presentation, both in their own way. Same with soundtrack. But I do like Ranah's arena more. And regardless of her weird janky hitboxes, I feel like the camera is a lot better in her fight than the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. And I actually feel like the fight's easier to learn, where there's less bullshittery, like from the Divine Beast Dancing Lions, like Lightning Phase, for example. But they're pretty close to each other. But again, I think it's another banger fight, and I know a lot of people don't like Ranah. And if you don't, that's fine. And now, the final one before I go eat my dinner. Again, thank you guys if you stuck around this far, I appreciate it. Radahn, Consort of Miquella, whatever Phase 2 is called. Promised Consort Radahn. I think it's Phase 1. Oh, what a fight. Alright, I have a lot to say here. So, first off, this was by far the hardest fight of the DLC. In my opinion, the hardest fight in the game. Harder than Millennia. And this is probably the hardest boss that FromSoft has ever made in any of their games. That's my opinion. The first phase... Okay, actually, pump the brakes. The boss arena in Ymir with the Gates of Divinity or whatever, pretty cool. I like it. Soundtrack, absolutely amazing. One of the best pieces that From's ever put together. 100%. Especially Phase 1. It's sort of like a remix of Radahn's song from the base game, but it's different and it's better. In Phase 2, you have like the influence of Miquella, you know, the holy aura, god stuff, and it's just very, very good. And like I said, the arena's good, and I mean, it's Radahn. So the design's good. Even the design of Phase 2 with Miquella on Radahn's back is very interesting. And obviously, you know, during my challenge run, I don't know, it took me 200 plus attempts, it was insane. I learned Phase 1 like the back of my hand. I actually really like Phase 1. I think Phase 1 is incredibly fair. I parried him, but even if you don't parry him, for the most part, incredibly fair. Now I say for the most part because Radahn does have attack. It's like some sort of like slash cross attack where it's like a frame trap. And pretty much the only way to dodge it is you have to stick to your left, his right, in a big way. And obviously not, you know, be in the middle of attacking and stuff like that. And you can dodge it, but it is one of the hardest attacks to diagnose and dodge in the game if you're not perfectly positioned. Like, perfectly positioned. And a lot of people, you know, hated the fight simply because of that, especially like no-hit runners and stuff. But in general, I actually really like Phase 1. You know, it's fun, flowy combat, easily parryable. You know, the AoEs and stuff, very easily diagnosed. The problem is Phase 2. When Miquella comes into play, he pretty much does everything he does in Phase 1, except everything has an after effect AoE now. There's flashing lights everywhere. He gains new attacks where there's clones. It's like slam, 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 and then he comes in with the regular thing. He has literal arena-wide AoEs that he does at the beginning of the phase typically, and he can do it again. He has his like Radahn crash thing that he does in Phase 1 in a sense, or excuse me, the first time you fight him. He does that around like 15-20% health left or something. And I don't know, man. I ended up really learning it and it clicked, but it took me a long ass time. I just find Phase 2 is just a little much. There's just too much shit going on. Like, it is like an insane light show. I've heard that on some people's rigs and consoles, like it slows down, it stutters, like it's just like, there's just too much crap going on. And again, that weird like slash attack I told you about with the frame trap is stupid. And I don't know, like I said, I ended up really learning. Obviously, I killed him with zero Scadutree Blessings at level 1. But there's just so much crap, man. It's just such a, ugh. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because the presentation's really good. And Phase 1's a lot of fun, but Phase 2 is just not fun to me. Let's be honest, I hate Phase 2. It's one of my least favorite things that From Software has ever done. And I mean that. It's just, all the good that in this fight, Phase 2 just kind of wipes it out for me. But I have to be objective and take into consideration the arena, the soundtrack, the fact that I do like Phase 1, the spectacle of it all. But too many lights, too much crap going on, too much bullshittery in Phase 2. And let's be honest, guys. I know you could say lore, whatever. It's Radahn again. I know he's not on Leonard this time, but like, really? Like that was the whole thing? You know, you have to fight Radahn and Mohg to get into the DLC because Radahn is now the consort of Miquella, but we needed Mohg's body. That's why Radahn in the DLC has like the horns and stuff. It's just, not a huge fan of it. Kind of let down by it. Probably my least favorite final boss, other than, like, legitimately probably the only final boss that FromSoft has ever done in their base games and DLC that I like less than Radahn would probably be What's-Her-Face from Dark Souls 2. Wow. And I love Dark Souls 2 and I can't remember her name right now. What's her name? Nishandra. Jesus. Other than Nishandra, I think Radahn is, like, easily the worst final boss they've ever done. I like Gwyn more. I like Manus more. Obviously, if you consider, like, the real King Allant, where he's flopping around, but if you do false King Allant, I like him more. I like, you know, Slave Knight Gale. I like, fucking, you know, the 3 DLC bosses, for Dark Souls 2. Sword Saint Ishin. Soul of Cinder's better. You know, I like Radagon and Elden Beast more too, like it, so I don't know. Disappointed me, wasn't a huge fan of this whole thing in general, but has some good stuff going for it, so because of that, I'll put it in the B tier. I guess I like it more than Meter. God, I don't know, man. I guess I'll put it at the top of my B tier, but good God, there's a lot of bad stuff going against it. Anyways, guys, I've been rambling on forever and I'm now absolutely exhausted. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you guys think about, you know, what were your favorite fights? Are there ones that, you know, really you hated? Are there ones that you really liked? All I ask, please be civil in the comments. If you're weird, I'm not going to respond or I'll outright delete it. So, I only say that because FromSoft has a super toxic community. Anyways, guys, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.